disclaimer in that this conversation is not intended for the media and is off the record. Now, for the audience, during the session, there is the ability to ask or send questions, which I very much look forward to looking at. But firstly, if I may start. So, Jose, over the past 3 years, we've seen this phenomenal kind of growth in the platform. Active customers, I think, have gone from 1 million to over 3 million, 3.3 million in the last quarter, 1 million added alone in 2020. I think some might say that the environment last year obviously saw this big acceleration in terms of the adoption for the luxury consumer. What can you tell us that you see across the consumer and your cohort that gives you the confidence that this is really still at the early days? Thank you.
Thank you, Louise. I think that's a really key question. And from a macro perspective, I think there's still so much potential in this industry. If you look at the luxury industry, as you know better than I do, very, very resilient industry. I started with Farfetch in 2008, in October, 2 weeks later when the brothers went bankrupt. And in 2010, the industry had fully recovered and on a 2-year stack was already growing. And we saw the same this time around, which from many of the luxury groups, obviously we don't have the figures from the whole industry, but we've seen Cartier, Louis Vuitton, Hermes on a 2-year stack already on very, very healthy growth. So I think we can count with an industry growing at a steady 5-6% CAGR overall. But I think what's really interesting is that online is really underpenetrated in this industry still today. So in 2019, only 13% of sales, 12 to 13% of sales were online. That increased quite a lot during COVID to around 23%. But that's not on a normalized basis, right? That's because the offline sales were depressed. Once they stabilize, we're going to land at 20% or just below 20. And that's a very low penetration if you compare to other other segments of the fashion industry, or even other consumer goods. And the reason for that, we now know clearly, is not because customers do not want to buy luxury online. It's because traditionally the brands have been reluctant to sell online. You remember the Prada IPO when they famously said we will never sell online. Gucci didn't sell online until just 3-4 years ago. And same with Louis Vuitton and Hermes. Now they sell on their own website, obviously. So this is an industry that adopted e-commerce very, very, very late. And but I think what is happening here is a paradigm shift. So what with COVID, what we're seeing is an acceleration of what was already a secular trend. So before COVID, Bain estimated that 35% of sales would be online by 2025. That's gone up since then. So now people think it's around 35 to 40% in 5 to 7 years time. So there's an acceleration of that secular trend that was already there. And that's driven by what I think is a paradigm shift from consumers. Let's not forget that for many luxury consumers, the definition of buying luxury was jumping on a plane, going to Paris, Avenue Montaigne, and being treated to the whole ceremony. They had never bought anything outside physical stores. And for example, for all these traveling customers in China, travel shopping was 70% of luxury consumption. That has been repatriated in one go. The same happens for Middle East, other emerging markets, even domestically within countries like the US. That has led to a surge in online sales. I think this is very sustainable. Also from the data that we see in our own business. So we've been absolutely laser focused on measuring cohort by cohort since the beginning of the pandemic, the quality and the resilience of these customers, the stickiness of these customers. Our cohorts throughout the pandemic, our Q2 2020, Q3, Q4, we now know they have a higher LTV on a 3-month basis, on a 6-month basis, on a 9-month basis, higher LTVs than previous cohorts, higher retention rates, and improving CAC to LTV ratio. So, and that's one of the reasons why we're leaning in. And as you said, we're acquiring tons of new customers because we see this stickiness and this quality, very high quality customer coming through.
You touched on many things there, which we're going to bring out a little bit later on in the discussion. But I wonder if you can just talk to us a little bit about the pace of acceleration last year, the team reacting, the surprises to you, and how you managed the team, and maybe a little bit about your leadership style in there as well. Thank you, Jose.
Well, I think, I always say COVID-19 for us started in January because we have a big team in China. We have 600 people in China. We have a team in Tokyo. And the year started before we even knew this was going to be a pandemic with those teams already, those cities already in lockdown and lots of doubt on where was consumption going to go in those critical parts of the world, right? And then obviously what we saw was the spreading of COVID-19 throughout the world. And it was completely unprecedented and then shattered territory. So no one knew if the factories were going to produce any goods, if the retailers were going to be able to ship their orders, if the customers were going to be buying at all. So there was a lot of uncertainty. So managing through that uncertainty was a key part of the process. The other was supporting the creative community. We gathered in a room that in March, and we said, okay, so what do we do as a platform? What is our role during the pandemic? And clearly, we're not here to save lives. That's not what we do. But we can save businesses. And we've focused all our editorial activity, our algorithms, even our logistics at servicing the small and medium brand and boutique. We launched this campaign called #SupportBoutiques, which really brought the smaller businesses to the forefront of everything we do, from the homepage to the algorithms, the emails, the push messages on app, etc. And that has really resonated with consumers. This message of buy local, support small businesses through the pandemic was something that really resonated. And as a result of that, we saw a very fast acceleration of the business, which is a result of the acceleration of our sellers. As you know, we don't own, well, we own 10% of the inventory we sell broadly. So 90% is the sales from our sellers. So by making them successful throughout the pandemic, we were successful as well.
Now, I can see several questions coming over, so I'm going to interweave some of these with some other thoughts as well. And just going back to the cohort numbers, the 3 million that you have in active consumers today, can you just give us a little bit of flavour about the regional? And I think really the question comes from, is everywhere still quite low penetration? So presumably 3 million on a global platform still seems to be a huge amount of opportunity ahead of you. And do you think the penetration rates of luxury spending will be pretty much equal across the regions? Thank you.
I think you touched on a very good point. I mean, we're a $3 billion company, 2020 numbers, so GMV was 3 billion, which is 3 billion in sales, essentially, same as revenue if we were a retailer, on a $300 billion industry. So essentially, Farfetch is 1% of the industry. And if you think online, we're 4% of the industry, so it's nothing, right? So if you look at the leading platforms in other industries, OTAs, for example, Expedia and Booking, 90% of the market. If you look at music, Apple Music and Spotify is now probably 50% of the market. I don't know the latest numbers, but typically you will see that the leading platform in these industries commands between 30 to 40% market share. And we're at 5, let's call it. So I think there's a huge room for expansion for Farfetch, and across all these regions, from our largest market, which is still the US, China, which is the second largest, but growing faster than the average. But many other markets around the world. And I think, to answer the second part of your question, I think the penetration is low all around the world. In some markets, it's single digits, like China, and other emerging markets is single digits. These are pre-pandemic numbers. Post-pandemic or during the pandemic, we don't know exactly. They're still coming through. But very, very low online penetrations. We know that in China, there are 30 million, luxury shoppers, active luxury shoppers, and Farfetch has only 3 million globally, right? So we're really in very early stages of growth for this company.
Great, thank you. And actually just moving on to China, and obviously there's a huge amount of development that's happening there, and we know the early phases are just on that journey in terms of the partnership with Alibaba and Richemont. I wonder if you can talk to us about the existing operations today, but how you envisage this, the broader business and the Farfetch China in its entity further down the road, what it will bring in difference to the consumer from where you are today.
I think China is tremendously exciting for us. China is going to be the world's largest luxury goods market. We think it's going to be a $100 billion opportunity in mainland China alone. And I think what's really exciting is that we're really the only Western player that has invested massively in China, that is succeeding at large scale in China. So we have our local team, 600 people, as I said, engineers, data scientists, online marketeers. We had historically and continue to have a fantastic partnership with Tencent. We're powering 80 luxury brands on WeChat, so we power their mini programs. And obviously the recent partnership with Alibaba, which it's a stamp of approval. They know China well, let's put it this way. And the fact that they recognize that in luxury specifically, Farfetch was the leading platform, was for us fantastic stamp of approval, but also an opportunity because we can absolutely partner and go after this, vast market, which they recognize is expanding, we recognize is expanding, and therefore is a case of partnership, not a case of competition. And in fact, the partnership with Alibaba is a global partnership. So they see Farfetch as the platform that can digitize luxury. As you know, Alibaba strategy is called New Retail. It's about digitizing physical retail, and they've done it with groceries, they've done it with convenience stores, they've done it with car dealerships. They haven't done it with luxury, and they hadn't planned to. So they didn't know exactly how to approach the luxury segment. It's a very specific experience for the customer. They saw what we did for a number of years with the Start of the Future program. Obviously, the partnership with Chanel, Browns, Brook Street recently relaunched, relocated, and they identified that we were also embracing the same vision. Therefore, we call it luxury new retail, which is the digitization of global luxury, both online and offline. So how do we bring the offline store to the digital space? Not just in China, of course, we're going to do it in China, but also globally. And as part of the partnership, the opening of the Tmall storefront, which is the tip of the iceberg, it's the most visible, of course, because you can go there, see it, and it already materialized in a very short period after the announcement. But it's one of the many things we're going to do with Alibaba going forward.
And just sticking with China in terms of, and you did mention a few things on your last earnings call, but the depth of inventory that you're able to bring, I think we get a lot of questions about this, but in terms of the real nuance that Farfetch is able to take very differentiated and much deeper inventory pool, particularly for the private labels. I wonder if you can just give us some context around that and the importance of those labels in the apparel market.
Absolutely. I think, what's incredible for a brand is that with one single integration with Farfetch, they're live globally, including in China. And in China, they're live in an entire ecosystem. So if you look at the media side of the ecosystem, they'll be live on WeChat, on Little Red Book, on Douyin, on Weibo, etc., Baidu, all the media channels that we have present, including e-commerce enabled presence. And then on the e-commerce side, they have obviously the presence on the China Farfetch app, which is the vast majority of our sales, and now Tmall's luxury pavilion. So exposure to 811 million shoppers on Tmall. And that's with one single integration, with no inventory risk, because the inventory is already there with the initial integration. So the inventory that they make available is visible globally. And what that means in the case of China is that brands get access to a customer that is absolutely crucial. We know that the Chinese customer, China plus Millennial and Generation Z as cohorts of customers are more than 100% of the growth of this industry. The rest is shrinking, in other words. And so this is existential for a brand. So you have to capture Chinese customer, and you have to capture the digital first Millennial Generation Z Chinese customer, and then the Millennial Generation Z global customer as well, but in China in particular. And we know that these customers are on multi-brand channels. They are digital first. They're very active on social media. But this is very difficult to navigate for the vast majority. To give you an example, 95% of the brands we brought to Tmall didn't have a presence on Tmall and didn't have a presence in China for the vast majority of them. It's not easy. You need to set up an entity. You need to allocate inventory that you ship cross-border, take a risk on that inventory, which means the amount of the breadth of SKUs that you make available on Tmall normally is very narrow for these brands, even when they get there. To run a local operation, a local e-commerce operation with a website and an app, it's very heavy lifting. Very few brands have that, right? So we're able to work with the ones that already have and expand it with cross-border inventory, which multiplies their availability on Tmall, for example, by 7.5 on average. So if they had 100 SKUs, they have 750 all of a sudden, which increases the exposure of the brand dramatically in a crucial channel. And for the ones that have no presence, it's a tremendous opportunity. So I think that's very exciting and is resonating with customers. We had a very, very successful launch, and we now know this is going to be a meaningful channel for us for Farfetch China in 2022 and beyond.
Thank you. And sticking with the longer term kind of objectives, there's a lot going on at Farfetch, and there's always a hive of activity every time we hear from you each quarter. But when we think about the longer term and the expansion priorities, it's great to have this opportunity to ask yourself, Jose, in terms of the areas of priority. We get many questions. Obviously, the business has evolved, continues to evolve with new guards. We've got the platform solutions part of the business as well, luxury new retail. We sometimes get asked about the priorities in terms of the relevance of the marketplace longer term and just the expansion priorities. Great to if you can talk around that. Thank you.
Absolutely. I think, starting with the marketplace, which is the majority of our revenue and the most visible part of the business, I think we're really in day one. I think one of the tremendous opportunities is building the brands. So although we're a larger business than the second largest online luxury distributor, we don't have we don't believe in brand awareness. We're actually department stores lead in brand awareness. So if you brand awareness from Neiman Marcus, Saks, Nordstrom's in the US is well over 80%, including online. Then comes, some of the pure players, or one of the pure players, and then comes Farfetch. So although we have a larger business online than any of these individually, right? So I think, we already built a tremendous business. It will get much better. It will get much better once we advance the brand. And this is something that, that when companies crack the brand code, everything starts working better. So the conversion rate goes up, demand generation becomes more efficient, retention is higher, partnerships become even more strategic, although we have partnerships with brands that are as strategic as they can get. I can see how they can become more strategic, but having a great brand that the brands recognize and consumers recognize is so important. So I think the marketplace has a tremendous, tremendous growth ahead. Again, we're 4% of this fast expanding industry. You look at digital platform sales in Q1, we grew 60% year on year. So that's, significant growth coming not just from the marketplace, but, significantly from the marketplace. So I think the marketplace has many years and maybe decades of very fast growth ahead of us. Having said that, our mission is to be a platform. We are a platform company. I always thought of Farfetch as a platform company. When I looked at the opportunity back in 2007, the idea was this industry doesn't have a platform. Other industries have platforms. We don't. In the luxury, and I was both a coder and a designer, so there's no platform for this industry. And so that platform vision, where the marketplace is one tenant, there's other tenants, right? So there's brands, department stores that can be tenants of the platform, business units, that can be like NGG, Stadium Goods. They're all tenants of that single platform. So that's the way we think. So we platformize everything we do. So people can use every element of the Farfetch infrastructure. They can use our fulfillment. They can use our, multiple payment systems around the world. They can use our e-concessions as a service. You coined the e-concessions term, which we shamelessly stole from you, Louise, sorry. I hope you forgive us. But the e-concessions model, which we invented in this industry. You invented the name, we invented the model, and now we're bringing it as a service. Why don't we platformize it? Let's open it so that other retailers, like Harrods, for example, now they have 3 concessions and counting, one with Brunello, Chanel, the other with Zane, and the other with Burberry, with spectacular explosion actually of sales of these brands once they move to an e-concession model. I think this becomes an even more powerful mission, I think, and that includes the physical realm, right? So we're also creating technology that connects the physical experience with the digital experience. So fast forward, 10 years, we really want to service the brands and the top retailers in the world with every single need they have. In terms of retail, that's why we call it luxury new retail, online, offline, monobrand, multi-brand. And of course, they want to do everything with us, but hopefully they'll pick and choose and they'll do a lot of things with us.
And I'm going to carry on just in terms of let's think about the consumer kind of cohort. The questions come through about access and obviously the loyalty system that was launched a little while ago, not that long ago in the grand scheme of things, but what you can tell us about the cohort. And within there's a question about AOV. It's being very resilient. We saw some very nice growth recently, and obviously the pricing environment for luxury goods seems incredibly strong at the moment with the overall climate. So can you just talk to us about the private client, the benefits of getting the customer onto the entry level, how sticky you're seeing that customer and purchase behavior? Thank you.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about loyalty. I think it's so important for our business. Starting from the bottom of the pyramid up, so to say, we tested access, as I said, not a long time ago, I think maybe 1.5 years ago, 2 years, and we started introducing it in some markets. We used a control group. We continue to use a control group, so people that are not exposed to access still today, across all tiers, even people that should be platinum but are on purpose not exposed to the program, so we can keep that statistically significant control group. And what we saw was an average 20% uplift across all tiers after joining access. So it really works. And as a result, we've extended access to all customers. So once you purchase on Farfetch, we now have auto enroll. So we enroll you on bronze, which is the first tier, and then you go up. We try to build, obviously, this is, everyone has loyalty programs, or most people have loyalty programs. So the question is, how good is our loyalty program and how different it is? And so we are constantly working on ways to add value to it. So if you look at the top of the pyramid, we offer things such as fashion concierge, for example. So fashion concierge hunts down anything you may wish in fashion, or high jewelry, or watches, or really anything to do in this world of fashion. So we've done, for example, through Fashion Concierge, a $1 million high jewelry sale for one single customer. The other day we sold a handbag for $650,000. We regularly sell watches for $200,000, $300,000, and these are not available online. So we hunt them down. We have partnerships with these maisons, and the customer says, "I'm looking for a stone of this size and with this design," and we actually mix and match them with the maisons and provide all of that service. We can do that uniquely because we're not a retailer. We're not pushing the inventory we own. Our competitors cannot do that because they have to prioritize the inventory they own. If they don't own the inventory, they'll tell you, "Well, I'm so sorry, but I'm not stocking that." They'll try to convince you that what you want is not cool, what they have is cool, and we don't have that approach. So we can do a truly concierge service. The other differentiator is the localization. So we now have 120 stylists in over 25 cities. So we have stylists in Miami, we have stylists in tier 2 cities in China. We have 14 offices now. Every single Farfetch office has a private client department. But then we have satellite mini offices or people just working from home that can service the customers in a very localized way. This is very unique. Department stores in the US, normally they centralize this and it's only one country, and even the other retailers, they will have maybe 3 offices, but certainly not the localization. And this has proven to be really powerful because we know the events. If there is a social event happening in the tier 2 city, we will know that as an exhibition or this or that, so we can tailor to the cultural zeitgeist. If there's a brand that is particularly hot, we can speak their language. It's not intimidating because we can't forget, for a tier 2 customer in China, calling a private client, a private stylist in London, it's very difficult. Even if they speak Mandarin, they've been the culture to London. Right? I don't know what's happening in Portugal anymore. I don't know who's the prime minister these days, actually, prime minister, I know, but that's it. That's my very limited knowledge. So you really need that localized, presence, and many other things. The experience itself. So if you're a private client, the app unfolds in a completely different way. So it recognizes you, and so. Having said this, I think we're only scratching the surface. So our private client business is around 25% of our sales. The normal benchmark is 40% when you hear from other competitors, which means there's a lot of room for growth, and we have seen private client grow typically faster than marketplace over the past few quarters.
Thank you. That's very interesting in terms of, and presumably the Asian market typically has a higher kind of basket spend and things like that. Can you just give us an idea? I'm sure we're not going to get the numbers, but in terms of the benefits it can give, presumably you get the high economic value of the cohort in terms of as you move up the loyalty system. And it's probably quite a large magnitude of difference in terms of frequency and spending. Can you give us any insight there?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you move up, every metric gets better from retention. So super high retention, 90% plus on the private client tier, and it's really interesting. And it goes down tier by tier by tier. And then the lowest retention are people that were not exposed to the private client to the loyalty access program, or are bronze or silver. They have the lowest retention. So it's really about how can we move these guys up, step after step after step. And what we see is that retention, spend per customer, repeat purchase, behavior, and obviously all of AOV and all of that then leads to LTV, right? And the LTV is much higher, on this cohort. So it's absolutely crucial that we continue to invest in differentiated services. And part of it is also original product that we do with brands, either drops or NGG, our own brand platform. Maybe you would be surprised to know that Off-White is one of the top 5 brands for our private clients, both men and women. We were very surprised when we looked into it prior to the acquisition. So although it's a streetwear brand, it's appealing to that private client customer. And of course, NGG is allowing us to do special treats for these customers, and have sneaker drops that no one can get their hands on, and special capsule collections and collaborations.
Now, just sticking with customer acquisition and retention, you did announce a very exciting that you'll be launching into beauty in 2022 at some point. Can you just talk to us about, has that been a long time in the making? Is this about getting more stickiness to the consumer? And what will the Farfetch proposition? You won't be able to tell us much, I'm sure, at this stage. They're all secret plans, but what do you think Farfetch can bring differently to the beauty category?
I think it's the right question. What is our point of difference? because obviously beauty is a tremendous opportunity. It's 25% of the luxury market, which is untapped right now for us. And we know that customers are very engaged digitally, so it's a higher penetration than fashion in terms of our space. I think I think we have a very differentiated offering, both in terms of the brands, what we offer the brands, and what we offer customers, right? So in terms of what we can offer brands, starts with the e-concession, right? So the problem in the beauty space is that it's dominated by wholesale, right? So you have 2, maybe 3 beauty chains which dominate globally. They operate on the wholesale model, and even the department stores very often operate, with the exception of the big maisons, but very often they operate on the wholesale model as well. And this is something that brands really want to change, but they don't want to be on Amazon because they're already on Amazon without knowing, through gray market and with also some problems in terms of authenticity sometimes, etc. So for the brands is what do we do, right? Because wholesale is our only go-to-market alternative in terms of multi-brand. They can go direct to consumer, but that's only a part of the market. In terms of a multi-brand environment, they can only go wholesale or Amazon, which they have for all these years been reluctant to do. And now we open a model, which is the model they've always been waiting for. So we've had really fantastic reaction from the brands in terms of this e-concession model for beauty. I think then is access to the audience, right? Access to the pinnacle of, this is 3.3 million active customers shopping $600 AOV, right? And 750 in China. So this is, and again, the Generation Z millennial customer that they so much rely on. So a very powerful audience, very powerful model in terms of both merchandising, control of pricing, control of promotions, and margin, right? So all these advantages make it very, very compelling for the brands. In turn, for the customers, and that's absolutely key because without the customer, we don't have anything. We're building a very unique experience because it's an experience that immerses them in the crossover of high fashion and beauty. All these other platforms, they tend to be beauty specific. There are some players, department stores and other players that offer fashion and beauty, but normally it's completely separate. So you have the beauty section, you have the fashion section, and maybe they'll recommend add something to the basket at the end of the purchase. But the journey is not really immersive across the 2 worlds. And this is something that we're working very hard with our consumer products team, our brand team, to really create a voice and a journey that really inspires customers. So if they came in to look for fashion, they can be inspired by beauty along the way in many, many, many points in the journey, not just a checkout or basket. And the other way around, they may come in for beauty and be inspired about fashion. So other things are virtual try-on and technology, augmented reality technology applied to the beauty space. So we're working to have absolutely best-in-class technology. It's not unique to us. Others have virtual try-on, but we want to have an experience that goes over and beyond and has proprietary elements to it. And then the rest is a surprise, as you say. Watch the space. But we think it's absolutely key to have a proposition which brings added value both for customers and brands, and the initial reaction and the focus groups we've done also with customers are very encouraging.
So this is much more about the new customers that you can attract with the beauty category, but importantly, getting more share of that wallet of the existing customer base. Sounds super exciting. So we'll wait and see what's in store for us for 2022. And just we've got a couple of areas left in the last few minutes. I wondered if you could just touch on your sustainability targets. You had some very big 10-year objectives that you talked about earlier this year. There's lots that you've discussed about and talked about with circularity in fashion and Second Life. But where do you see the business helping out in this initiative, but really driving it? I know personally you've talked about it a lot in the past. Thank you.
Thank you, Louise. It's one of my favorite topics, and it will take us half an hour because we're really doing so many initiatives. And I know we have a lot to do, and this is an ongoing journey, but we literally have dozens of initiatives from, for example, carbon offsetting. So if you buy anything on Farfetch, we will carbon offset all deliveries and returns. We did that in April 2020, so even in the midst of the pandemic, we didn't hold back on that investment. We thought it was super important to advance it as soon as possible. Circular economy, I think in terms of multi-brand, in-season luxury players, we're the only ones that really mixes new fashion with pre-owned, because everyone else is either totally pre-owned, like Vestiaire Collective, they're doing an amazing job. I know you spoke to Max yesterday. I think that the team over there is incredible. Or they're fully, new and in-season with very few exceptions. So we've been doing this for actually a few years now, where we have both the pre-owned and the new in the same space, and we see like fantastic response from customers. We do it in a different model, so we outsource from vintage boutiques, luxury vintage boutiques, but we started sourcing from customers directly as well with the Second Life program. So you can send us your handbag, and we will give you Farfetch credit, and then you can buy new. Also, donation service. We have a service with Thrift Plus, restoration services, which we did with the Restory, another startup that we partner with, so we can prolong the life of your pair of shoes or bag or a luxury item. So it's really a number of initiatives. I'm thinking environmental calculator, for example. So as a consumer, you can see the difference between if you buy this shirt in cotton and that shirt in linen, how many liters of water, how much CO2 is emitted. All of that information is easily calculated for you. The conscious edit, so we have a filter, and every product and brand is rated by a third-party agency. And you can filter and buy those that were rated conscious, either materials or whether produced or they're pre-owned. And actually, it's very interesting because we see faster growth of the conscious edit than of the rest of the marketplace, which seems like it's resonating strongly with customers. And so we're really trying to give the industry, our partners, tools, because it's very difficult for brands to do some of these things. And to the customer, empower the customer to make the right decisions, and really try to be a platform that advances the sustainability cause.
Thank you, Jose. And a couple more. I keep saying two more, but they keep coming through the questions. But if we do two final ones, can you just talk about the scalability of the platform? Obviously, the 3 million customers that we were talking about earlier on in the discussion. Where's the real kind of bandwidth to get the scalability and further margin expansion as you look to this path of profitability at Farfetch? Is it on the delivery side? Is it the fulfillment and the logistics? Can you just talk about the key areas and priorities you see for that? Thank you.
Yeah, so scalability and profitability, so those two questions. I think in terms of scalability, the business is tremendously scalable. And I give you one number. In Q1, the top 20 e-concessions, or the top 20 brands, which are the largest brands in the industry, grew at 150%. You cannot do this if you're a retailer. It's completely impossible. And you cannot do this if you're a marketplace without a distributed e-concession model. Because e-concessions are not made equal, right? If it's what I call a static e-concession, where brand ships 100 SKUs, 1,000 items to department store returns at the end of the season, I call it a static e-concession. Reason being, you cannot be dynamic. In the middle of the season, if you sell all of those, that's it. If you don't sell them, the brand has a problem because the inventory is going to be returned. Our e-concessions are completely scalable. We're tapping Prada. We have 70 integrations with Prada. Prada flagship stores, Prada warehouse in Milan, Prada e-commerce distribution center in Japan, etc. The same with Burberry, same with Gucci, same with all the others. So we're tapping on infinite shelves, essentially. So what is inventory is completely being replenished all the time because the brands are very good at this, at replenish their own channels. They're not good at replenishing wholesale because historically that's not how it works. You have like 4 drops a year. So the business is very, very scalable from a supply and demand point of view. And with huge room for growth and much more scalable, so that's why we can grow 150% or globally grow 60% like we did in the last quarter. In terms of the profitability, I think as we always said, it wasn't the top priority. Top priority was to acquire market share and acquire a leadership position in the business, which we now have, and we continue to capture market share aggressively. We're committed to profitability in 2021. We're absolutely on track. And I think it comes from many different areas. Obviously, you will see leverage of the fixed cost base, as you've seen over the past few years. That is going to continue. Leverage of the technology spend, although we don't want to leverage too much because investing in our technology is the future of our platform. But there has been leverage, and there will continue to be a relative amount of leverage there. But then it's things like fulfillment costs. So fulfillment costs. So it costs us much less to fulfill a domestic order, domestic delivery. And even less so if it's fulfillment by Farfetch, our own 6 distribution centers that we have around the world, than to fulfill a cross-border order, right? Which is not a surprise to anyone. But we are 85% cross-border, and over 90, the vast majority is cross-border and not done on fulfillment by Farfetch, right? So as we move, even only slightly, if you would change the model and you would have 70-30, it would have a dramatic change to our P&L because there's a lot that logistics revenue and logistics cost of goods is a big chunk of our P&L. We still want to make this global supply available. That's the beauty of Farfetch. But that can be 20-30%. It doesn't need to be 90% or 85%, right? So how can we go more local, more domestic, closer to the customer? And we're now at the scale that we can do that. And other things are obviously the efficiencies in the long term in demand generation through data, personalization, brand awareness. As we increase brand awareness, demand generation will get more efficient. We don't think that we should leverage demand generation now, or we should spend less now, because we know that we're acquiring lots of customers with a very quick return on investment. Our CAC to LTV, the payback is well less than 6 months. So it doesn't make sense for us to try to be profitable by growing slower in terms of this demand generation line. So this is probably something that we will continue to do what we're doing, which is to lean in a little bit. But as you fast forward a few years, we're definitely focused on, in the long term, that 30% EBITDA on revenue. And I can tell you that the older cohorts already have a 60% order contribution. So our order contribution on average is 34%, 33 to 40% per quarter. But that's new customers with probably zero order contribution, and old customers, and the older cohorts have 60% consistent order contribution, which then would take us straight to that 30% profitability. So it's not castles in the air. It actually is already happening on a unit cost basis for the existing cohorts of customers. It's just that obviously we want to continue to expand because we have a huge opportunity ahead of us.
That's really encouraging. Thank you, Jose. And just to finish off, in terms of when we think about the longer term and the industry, we've got a very nice growth in the organic kind of luxury business. We have digital, which is obviously taking a lot of share in the overall pie from a fairly low base still in the current circumstances. How does the share of, let's use the word e-concessions, one of our favorite, but e-concessions, brand.com, we have the e-tailers. How do you expect that kind of landscape to look like long term? Thank you.
It is difficult to anticipate. So I think brand.com is typically around 20% of the market. So 80% is purchased on multi-brand environments. I think this is pretty safe, I believe, to say that this will continue to be the case. Because as a consumer, you will not download 10 apps or 15 apps or 20, let alone 3,500 apps or tabs in your browser. You just won't do that. So you need this curated aggregation of a multi-brand environment. Of course, if you're a $10 billion brand, it compensates. You need to have both, right? You need to have brand.com and be very strong at brand.com, and then have the right type of multi-brand exposure. So I think this curated aggregation in the digital space is super important. I always say that it is pleasant to switch from store to store in the physical world. It is pleasant. You're in New Bond Street, you come out, you have a cafe, go to another store. Online, there's no advantages. You have to type your credit card twice, your address. You have to speak to 2 customer service agents because you placed 2 orders. It's just pain. So there's this need for curated aggregation, which happens in the physical world. That's why you have the Selfridges and the Harrods and the Liberties and all that, and the Browns. It happens much more strongly in the digital world, in my point of view. Then multi-brand. If multi-brand is going to continue to be 80% of the game, so to say, in what model will multi-brand operate? And here you consistently hear the brands say they want to go e-concession. That's the model that they prefer for all the reasons that we've said. And here I think that it's very exciting because we've invented that model in this industry. We're 6 years in. We have hundreds of integrations with inventory points, and we have the technology that it's very difficult to replicate. We have the technology, integrations, relationships, the models operandi to do it. Now, I think it's even more exciting when you platformize this. So what about us enabling the brands to go faster down that route, like we're doing with Burberry and Sang and Brunello at Harrods? So we really look forward to accelerate the brand's transition to e-concession, but dynamic e-concessions, not the static e-concessions, because the static e-concessions, the consumer has no advantages, so the consumer still sees the same range. There's no difference in prices, or actually the consumer won't have the promotions and discounts that the consumer likes in the department store. So for the consumer, the change from wholesale to static e-concession adds 0 value. For the retailer, it's detrimental because they have half the margin and they still have the same SKU count and the same depth. And for the brand, it is advantageous, but it's only for the brand. So it's not a win-win-win. If you have a dynamic e-concession, it's a win-win-win. The brand gets what they want with 0 inventory risk. Inventory is already flowing through the system. The retailer gets 5 times sales because suddenly the SKU and the depth is vastly expanded. That compensates for the lower margin, so that's good for the retailer. And the consumer obviously gets a much better choice. So I think this is really interesting, and we're looking forward to partnering both with brands and retailers to platformize this.
Well, that is a wonderful place to draw this session to a close. It sounds as though we've got an awful lot to look forward to, and we'll look forward to following all the progress. But Jose, very much a very big thank you to you for joining us today, and thank you to everyone listening.